Welcome back to the ZERT Coffee and Chaos podcast, a show where we talk about anything and everything relating to what it means to be a survivalist and a prepared individual in today's day and age. Back on the show with me is Jamie Franks. I'm your host, Chris Bartagone. Thanks for tuning in. Jamie, welcome back.
Thanks. Good to be here as always.
You had a week off. We had a show in between here that had a different guest, we'll say. You're the co-host now, but I know you were on vacation.
Yep.
You were out doing a little bit of some fun diving out in the beautiful islands of Hawaii.
Yeah, my daughter had never been to Hawaii before, but she has a friend that has family there that's like always bragging about it. So she's always been asking me to go. So diving is a good excuse to go. And now, from California to Hawaii, like flight, now there's nonstop flights from San Diego to Honolulu, and they're pretty cheap. So it was a good time. So we went and had a great time. And now I'm back and Halloween's in full swing. And
yes,
my month of October is like full of all kinds of cool Halloween stuff. And
that's awesome, man. That's awesome. And the weather is starting to change here. The leaves have started to fully turn. It's called leaf peeping season out here. So all of the colors are happening. But today it's 85 degrees and sunny out. So I mean, It's beautiful. It's a end the work day at the office, head home and drop the dog off and take the bike out for a little quick ride. But
we're definitely having the beginnings of fall weather. Like it's about like mid 70s during the day, and then it gets down into like the mid 50s at night. So like now is like the perfect time to sleep with the windows open and all that kind of stuff, which I love doing. So
you and me both, man. That's the time. And then what happens right after that is they start building the fires in the house, and you get those cool nights. You I leave the slider door open for a little bit because we got the screen up, and you hear the crickets and everything happening. It's just an amazing time. And like, this is when I love to go camping, this time of the year, when you can get out there and really just sit by the fire. And the moment you step away from the fire, you're outside, that temperature has dropped, but sitting by the fire around the camp is just a good time. The last time we were on here, we were talking about that whole winter camping thing, and man, that is still kind of on my radar. And, it's funny because I have people that reach out to me and they talk about the shows that we do, that listen. And it's always great to hear people's feedback of what that show, or, what the shows mean to them, what they pick up from them. I was talking to somebody who just listened to the podcast for the first time last week, and she was like, well, the takeaway from the last show was you were talking about the wool blanket. And I think that was the one that we were talking about, minimalist camping and talking about that wool blanket. I got to say, that's the other thing that I kind of like about this time of the year right now is it's cool. It's not cold. So like I sleep on top of all of my covers, like winter covers, and I just sleep with a wool blanket. And I mean, a wool blanket and a 55-pound nuclear heater pit bull, and we're right as rain in low temperatures. So but you and I talked after that show, or I don't know, it was after that show or before that show, but I told you that one night I was field stripping some MREs, and you were like, oh yeah, and you and I kind of discussed the process of field stripping MREs. And I think, when we decided on today's show, it was basically, food prepping for certain situations. And what does that look like? Camping meals versus prepping food for longer periods of possibly not having access to food. And I know when I brought this up to you, you were like, you know what? That's a great episode. Let's do it. I've got some visual aids, and obviously you showed me some right before the show. But do you do much with food prep or food prepping? So I guess we have to define that, right? Because there's people out there that food prep all week, or meal prep.
Well, yeah, there's meal prepping from the dietary and fitness aspect, but like I think the kind of food prep we're talking about is having different methods of having stores of food for what we always talk about, any type of natural disaster or man-made disaster, or any kind of shit hit the fan type of emergency. But as I'm so fond of talking about, everybody's minds always goes to these super extreme situations, but it doesn't even have to be that. It
No.
can be something as basic as going camping. And because there's car camping, there's glamping. Some people,
Right.
that when they go out in their Taylor Swift tour bus RV, they call that camping. So
Yeah.
and then there's people that that are, and God bless them. This is kind of one of the gaping holes in my game. The people that go out and hunt for food and meat, and then they preserve that meat or smoke it and turn it into jerky, and and that's another form of food prep and food preservation. So yeah, I don't know where
And I
we
want
want to start, but yeah,
well,
like
well, yeah,
my
well, yeah. So let's kind of let's hit that right there and break that down. So there's different situations and obviously different types of food um prep when it comes to this, right? So, and I think there's a difference between like the camping meals, like Ready Wise, Mountain House,
yeah
O meals, right? Those are boil water, add water, eat it out of a bag, you're done. MREs I think is a separate kind of a separate piece from that. I don't know. Maybe there are people that take MREs on camping trips, but I mean,
I've always said
that's
anybody that has a favorite MRE has not been forced to eat them for long enough. Because if you when you're in a situation where you have no other choice but to eat MREs for about a week, you will no
right.
longer have a favorite MRE. You'll hate them all and you'll hate your life. But yeah, and the Mountain House meals, like those are good. I have and Mountain House is just one. That's a brand name.
One brand, yeah.
There's several different ones actually, but I think maybe those are kind of the most. I think they're available at Walmart and stuff, so those may be the most common ones that people know. But those are fine. I usually, anytime I go camping, I usually take a few of those with me because there have been times where I've been caught in really, really bad weather, and just because of the conditions and time constraints or whatever, it's sometimes it's just easier to boil a cup of water in the tent, dump it in the bag, and be done. I even I think it was 2 years ago, I went out on like military, like field exercises, where we were like camped out on the beach, simulating that we were like stranded on a beach for 3 days. And that's actually what I took, so that I didn't have to eat MREs.
Right.
But there's actually like kind of a lot of people see MREs or hear about them in like movies and TV shows, and you see them in the Army surplus store, or maybe you see them at the swap meet, or on prepper boards or whatever. But there's actually like kind of a lot of bad information, I think, out there about MREs a little bit. Like you don't eat MRE, like there are breakfast MREs, but you don't need to eat MREs for like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. They are designed to where you're ideally supposed to eat one per day.
Right.
Because one full MRE is enough to give you like what your caloric intake should be for a full day. So I have known people that on deployment that didn't know any better. They'll eat 2 to 3 MREs a day because they, hey, it's breakfast. I'm hungry for breakfast. Eat an MRE. Oh, it's lunchtime. I'm going to eat another MRE. Oh, it's dinner. Now I'm going to eat another MRE. And like they start getting fat real quick. Because I mean, if you eat a whole MRE, I think it's around 2,000 calories
Right.
for one MRE. So that's your whole caloric intake for a day. But like for here, before we go into the field stripping of the MREs, we can talk about that. But as far as I know, we're not sponsored by anybody. I'm certainly
No,
not, but I think it's a good idea to just not to use too extreme of an example, but like we've referenced the show Alone before, and
right.
what's the thing that always gets them on Alone? It's food.
Right.
Like they build their shelter, they get their fire going, they get all they have everything. It's always the food that gets them.
They're always hungry.
Yep. And
they've always lost obviously a boatload of weight. So
right.
that's definitely something to think about. But so I guess as we break this down, food prepping for a weekend camping trip, if you're going in the car, is it's not really a thing. Like if you're going in a car and you can bring a cooler, then you bring a cooler and you put food in the cooler, you know.
Yeah, that type of camping or that type of food prep, if you want to call it that, like um, that allows you to get away with a lot more. You don't really, if that's what you're going after, you don't really need to be that well planned out. You don't really need to be
Right.
that prepared. You can kind of
Right.
hodgepodge some stuff together out of the cooler, and you'll be all right. But then when we start talking about kind of the minimalist type of camping, or fast and
Sure.
light camping, or long endurance type camping,
No, yeah.
backcountry camping, or
Yep.
and then put that into survival, then you do
Sure.
have to be very well thought out and very organized. And
And I think that that's the two situations, right?
yeah,
The preparing to go out for a hike through, you know, even like Paul did last year on the CNO Canal. He went and it was X amount of days hiking on that canal, and it was a minimalist situation. So he prepared something completely different. He did like ramen noodles,
yeah,
cold ramen noodles. Like he learned, obviously there was a way to prepare that. So for everybody that's, that's listening here, we're talking about a couple of different situations. One, you're going camping for the weekend, you have a car. That's not really food prep. That's some of the stuff that I did with a buddy of mine, and we would be like, hey, we want to eat like kings away from everybody else, and bringing a grill and cooking tenderloins and
yeah.
burgers and whatnot. That's not really what we're talking about. But the motorcycle camp that I was supposed to do a couple weeks ago was obviously a much smaller situation. In fact, it was one bag packed with everything for sleeping, eating, and preparing fire. Like that was all in one
Yeah.
bag. So
And
the
with
goal
what you
was
just said, sorry, you can
no, go
even
ahead.
split that into two different distinctions too. In like, because you mentioned eating like a king, and that's fine. And buying these meals that are bacon and cheese omelet or something for breakfast versus like Paul eating the cold ramen, or people that just bring dry oats. There is a difference in like eating something that you want to taste good and enjoying it versus just straight up caloric intake into your body so that you don't die.
Right.
So you can also split that into two different groups too.
Right. So um and so what I had planned, and even still, we were going to meet up, camp, set up camp, but we would still have a vehicle. So
Yep.
it was, we didn't plan to eat a Ready Wise or Mountain House meal for all of the meals. Like we were going to go out and take a ride and go eat lunch. And then we even made the decision to say, okay, well, if on the way home, on the way back to the camp on Saturday night, we want to go stop and grab, a steak, we'll cook that over the fire. That we brought you, things to
Mm-hmm.
obviously cook something. So I think that's one situation. But some of the situations that you're talking about. So I guess the first question is, what made you field strip an MRE?
Fantastic question there, Christopher.
Thank you.
So
Thank you.
uh, you know, warfare has evolved over, from World War One to World War Two to the Korea to Vietnam to Desert Storm to kind of the way we know warfare now. And I mean, all the warfare that I have experience with, like kind of like the global war on terror type of warfare in Iraq and Afghanistan. Um, in my experience, at least, gone are the days of going out on these like long patrols and digging foxholes and like living in your foxhole for days at the time, and then patrolling to another area and digging another foxhole. Like now, military operations have evolved, and kind of the way we fight wars now have evolved, where um, a lot of things are like vehicle based, meaning you're going to go out on a ground vehicle for a certain route or a certain distance or a certain amount of time and then come back. Or you're going to go out on a helicopter, and the helicopter is going to insert you directly onto an objective and then pick you up and bring you back. So, like when I was in Afghanistan, that's all that we did. We did a couple of like what we called like route clearance patrols, but like most of the stuff we went out on, we were going out like on a call, like almost akin to uh, you could liken it somewhat to what a fireman does. You get a call, we have an IED situation. We would go out,
Right.
just for that situation and then come back. So I mean, the longest I was ever out on an operation in Afghanistan was 3 days.
Okay.
So most of the time, because we did have vehicles, like we could a lot of times we just kept an unopened case of MREs in the back of the ground vehicles when we would go out. But like on that op where I was out for 3 days, I heloed out to the like kind of middle of nowhere of Afghanistan, and then I got heloed to a second location and then a third location, and then came back. And so we were out for about 3 days. And when we left on that op, we didn't know if we were going to be anywhere where we could get anything to eat. And as I already talked about, like, an MRE is basically made to do one a day. But again, the way we do combat operations and stuff now, you're wearing body armor, weapon, ammunition. Um, Afghanistan is a desert environment, so you have to carry water. You have to
Right.
carry med kit. Because of what we were doing, we had to carry detainee capture kit, and you also have to carry stuff to sustain a detainee as well. So you have to feed them and give them water as well. And
Brutal.
your radios, spare batteries for the radio, everything that takes batteries, you have to have spare batteries. So weight is a premium, but also size is also of a premium. And so anybody that has ever seen an MRE, it comes in that like tan brown bag, and it's kind of big. I mean, it's like the size of a football. Like,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah.
when you're trying to be as efficient as possible, like I never liked having a big, huge backpack on my back. So
Right.
I had like I was about to say a 3-day pack, but I don't even think it was a 3-day pack. It was, it was made by, Camelback. So it had the hydration bladder in it, but it was also kind of a small backpack in addition to the hydration bladder. So, and then I carried the detainee capture kit in a separate little, actually I modified a helmet bag to carry the detainee capture kit. And then everything else was kind of on me. But, so then trying to fit like, 3 days worth of food in this little backpack, you can't fit 3 of the football sized MREs in them. So you have to field strip them. And so anybody that's watching this on YouTube, when you open the outer bag, the MRE is all of this stuff, and it's a little bit heavy, but MREs are notorious because if you can see this, it's packaging inside of packaging inside of packaging. So
Right. So for those,
the
and let me just for those that aren't seeing that, and just to kind of understand it, imagine a Ziploc freezer bag with multiple bags inside of the Ziploc freezer bag, and then there would be an outer bag for all of that. So again, if
yeah,
you're
so
not watching this and you're just listening,
I'll say conservatively, there's maybe 20 items in here, 20 individual items. There's an
now,
overall outer heavy rubberized bag. Then
yeah,
there's like a lighter, almost like a Ziploc bag inside that still contains everything. And then each individual item of these 20 items is also individually packed in a bag. So it's literally packaging inside of packaging inside of packaging.
now, one of the constant things that we have talked about is dual purpose items,
Yeah.
right? Um, that outer bag can potentially be used as a chest seal
Yep.
in a
Yep. That's one of the, like in TCCC, that's one of the things one of the first tactical casualty combat care courses, TCCC, that I went through back in the day. They talked about for like a sucking chest wound or whatever, where you need a chest seal, you could use a duct tape, and they would say your ID card, but like really, like when you're going out on ops, you don't really carry your ID card. So
right.
you're far more likely to have an MRE package, and that it makes a better seal anyway. So yes,
Yeah.
you can.
Okay.
And
So
you can use it to carry water. If you know what you're doing, definitely should preface it with that. You can actually use
yeah.
it to boil water. But
Okay. So when making the decision to field strip the MRE, that should probably come into play.
yeah, and I always liked to keep the outer bag anyway, just because it makes a good little burrito when everything's in there. So, so I held up this one for those of you that can see. For those of you that can't, this is the unopened, basically MRE with every single thing still in it. And it's big and thick and heavy, and like I said, it's packaging inside of packaging inside of packaging for something that's basically never going to expire anyway. But so then take all the stuff that you don't want and don't need out of it. And again, you're kind of depending on what you're doing and where you are on that spectrum of, do you want something that tastes good? Do you want to sit down and enjoy your meal, or do you just want something to shove into your face to fuel your body and keep you going and give you some calories and some energy? Like the MREs come with a heater. That's great. We I'll tell you, I have seen more MRE heaters used for prank purposes than to actually heat the MRE, because you can make like a little bomb out of them, and it makes it sounds like a shotgun when it goes off. But so
Perfect.
I've seen way more of that than actually using it to heat up the MRE. But it comes with a spoon, but like I have this little titanium spork that I always keep in my kit anyway, so I never needed a little MRE spoon. And
right.
then, this may come as a surprise, but there's some stuff in this MRE that doesn't taste very good, and you don't want it. Like all these beverage powders, there's a whole bunch of different ones. This one is orange beverage powder, and it has sugar and electrolytes and stuff in it, but it
Right.
tastes terrible. So I don't ever use that.
Can
You always
confirm.
get, yes,
Yeah,
you always get this little
have.
package that has Splenda and toilet paper and gum, and there's like little instant coffee and stuff in there. So toilet paper is a good one, but you can take that little toilet paper out and stick it in your pocket.
But now also in some of them, when I was field tripping, they did come with matches.
Yep. Yeah. So some of them do, some of them don't.
Right.
That makes me think maybe you had an older one, because for the most part they don't come with matches anymore. They used to,
Okay.
back in the day when I was a kid. This was like early to mid 80s, and you could go to the Army surplus store and buy the MREs, and it had a pack of Lucky Strike cigarettes in them. But they definitely don't have that anymore.
No.
But so anyway, long story short, when I took everything that I personally don't want or don't need or know that I'm not going to use, this, for those of you who can see, this handful of crap is all the extra packaging. If you strip away all the extra packaging that you don't need, take out everything that you don't want, everything that you're not going to need, everything that you're pretty sure you're not going to use. I always take a razor blade or like a box cutter so I can make a nice clean cut, and I cut the outer MRE bag open, take everything out of it, separate all the extra packaging and everything I don't need, and then when I'm down to what's left, I reinsert it back into the bag, and then I roll it down nice and tight, and I use Gorilla Tape, because Gorilla Tape seals really well, and I seal it up, and what I'm left with is basically something that's about the size of just like a bean burrito. I mean, it's
not that big. Anybody that's looking at it right now, maybe a little bit bigger than like an iPhone Max, but obviously much thicker. Well, I'm sorry, much thicker than a phone, but not overly thick, and probably could fit that in a back pocket or a cargo pocket.
In a cargo pocket of military pants, yeah. So,
yeah.
But what I've found is the way that I field strip the MREs, when I field strip 3 of them, it's roughly the same size as one non-field stripped MRE.
Yeah.
So I'm basically fitting 3 days of food into the space that one non-field stripped MRE would take.
And now the other side of that is obviously, you said you use what was the tape? Gorilla Tape?
Gorilla Tape, yeah.
Yeah. So Gorilla Tape, duct tape, obviously, that's dual purpose as well. That could be used for a couple of different things. So and just to kind of, the night I spent a good portion of time cutting open. I had at one point at Clark Armory, I bought a pallet of the MREs back in 21. And they went like gangbusters. The first time I brought some in wasn't a pallet. They sold out. I brought a pallet of them in. They were the A and B meals. Spokako. I don't even know how to pronounce it, but it's SPOKA. I don't know. That's the brand of the MREs. And so I took a case home, and I've had it sitting there, and then my goal was to obviously strip it down and remove all that was unneeded. During that, definitely tried one of those powder drinks. Can confirm, does not taste well. Tried what, again, like each one of them, you have the meal or whatever it is, and then they give you, like an oatmeal cookie or a sugar cookie or a, one of them, like I think the newer ones maybe have like energy bars.
And like people get super creative. Like I know Marines that they call it like a Ranger cookie because there's one MRE that like the dessert option that it comes with is like the little shortbread cookies. So they'll
Yeah.
take that, the cocoa powder, the instant coffee, the sugar packets. I feel like I'm for and like because sometimes it'll come with just like the dehydrated like coffee creamer,
Yeah.
and they'll take the sugar, they'll crumble up the shortbread cookie, the and the cocoa powder and all that, and they'll mix it together and they'll put it like in the canteen cup, like I showed in the last
Yeah.
podcast, and they'll basically light a fire under it and like bake it, and they can make a cookie out of like the certain
I
MRE
mean,
ingredients. But
there you go.
we when I was in Afghanistan, we had like this big box, like a Rubbermaid bin kind of, and so whenever everybody would field strip their MREs because maybe there's something I don't like that maybe something you do like. And so,
Right.
but whenever all of us would field strip our MREs, we would like all the stuff that we would take out, all the usable stuff that we would take out, all the packaging and stuff we just throw away, but all the usable stuff we'd throw it in that Rubbermaid bin, and then we, cover your ears if you're easily offended. We called it the rat fuck box, and so then like you could go digging through the rat fuck box and like see what everybody else discarded, and then you could even like assemble your own little field stripped
Yeah.
MRE from all the discards. But
Yeah.
yeah,
Now, some of them, I mean, some of them come with whatever I mean, they call it a taco, and then they come with burritos that you can make a burrito with. Again, if you have any MREs out there, and you are listening to this show and you're like, okay, let me strip this down to its bare essentials. That's what we're talking about here. It's
yeah,
not, it was sure it's fun. Enjoy the night that you do it and look at all the stuff and decide what you want to keep out of it. I can tell you that I did not keep any of the drink because I take that back. I have them. They're fun, and maybe at some point, you can have a drinking game where you have to then do a shot with that, and ugh. But
I've been in the military long enough that like for emergency purposes it's one thing, but like I've seen so many different iterations of and evolutions of MREs, and I'm telling you, like as far back as my time goes, all of those drinks have always been terrible. Like if you're familiar with liquid IV, like liquid IV is way 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 better than any of the beverage powder that's ever going to come in an MRE.
yeah. So, at the end of the day, I have those. And I guess it's, well, why do I have those? Would I ever take those camping? No, probably not. Um, I would definitely take the mountain house meals and stuff like that. Um, because like you said, it's not like they're enjoyable. I mean, it's not like, you're going and you're like, God, this is the best cold dog food looking stuff in a brown bag that I've ever had. You know what I mean? Like that's
Yeah.
not what they're there for. Um, those have been packed down and stripped and repurposed with the tape for that kind of situation that would require me to grab those and go. Other than that, we're done.
And so, and
Um,
like for like a bug in situation, as we've talked about in other podcasts, we've talked about like bugging out versus bugging in. Um, the meals, and this is where I was going when I said like we're not sponsored by anybody,
right.
as far as I know. But the the emergency meals from My Patriot Supply, like I have those, and I bought the 3-month supply kit, and it's basically it's like it comes in these buckets, and each bucket is a little smaller than a 5-gallon bucket, like
Yeah,
the little Home Depot buckets.
I've
And
seen
like
those.
it's 4 of those little buckets, and it's enough food to last you for 3 months supposedly. But the stuff that's in it's really good. Like I tend to mostly keep like a keto or no sugar no grains type of diet, and so like if you go on My Patriot Supply, they have you can tailor your stuff to that. Like mine is all like high protein, low carb options, but it's all it's meat, and it's dehydrated meat, um, vegetables, beans, and I've
S- right.
obviously
So
I haven't eaten it for 3 months, but I tried some of it, and it's actually really good. And
So
so that's
are they freeze dried? So you have to activate them with water, or
yeah.
how does it work? Okay, so it's one of those. All right, so it's one of those activate one. Not really sponsored by anything, but obviously on on the ZERT page and even on Clark Armory, one of the products uh, that we have to offer is ReadyWise, same type of thing where you do have to activate them with waters. Like obviously it's a mountain house type situation. They have some of those buckets as well. They're like the square 5 gallon buckets
Mhm.
where you can stack them. You have like the meat bucket. There's like a breakfast bucket. There's a gluten free bucket.
But
Um,
these aren't, just to clarify, the ones I have they're not like Mountain House. It's they're
oh, okay.
individually packaged ingredients, and you just kind of open the ingredients as you want, and like you can cook like meal, like whatever meal you want to put
Oh,
together
okay.
out
Great.
of the ingredients. But
Awesome.
yeah,
Okay, so that's a great option for that long-term situation. When we talk about food prep or food prepping for a long-term situation, obviously it's one of the things. I think you've said it before, and maybe I'm like it's definitely something that's missing from my playbook, right? I mean, I have the camping meals, but when we talk about food prepping, there are multiple ways to prep food.
yeah,
um One of the things that plays into some of the food prep is obviously um climate, right? That one guy that won that show alone, who got the what did he get? He got a
the muskox.
Muskox, yes, the dude that like got it with the knife at the end.
Yep,
Like he survived because he used every piece of that muskox. And obviously, you're in Canada in the winter. Well, there's your freezer. There's
yeah.
your preserving food by freezing, which freezing is one way to prep food. You
Right.
got
If you have, like you said, if you're in a cold climate, or if you have electricity. If you don't have electricity, then most people are not going to have freezing food as an option.
exactly. I want to come right back to that
Yep.
in a second. But some of the other food prep styles, if you will, freezing, fermentation, canning, drying, freeze drying, vacuum sealing, mylar bagging, pickling, brining, all different ways to prep food for for duration, if you will.
Yep.
And I want to come back to that freezing situation for a second. There was a time up here in the winter where power was out, and it was cold out. It was cold enough outside to take the food from the freezer and put it outside in a cooler so it would stay temperature and not obviously thaw out. So we were able to kind of make that last, and then the power came back on, and a couple days later, but or a couple hours later, whatever it was. But it was either that, or it was also one situation where the power was out for an extended period of time. I think we had a tornado up here. Yeah, it was a tornado, and the power was out for a couple of days. And at the end of it, you either take all that food out and you start grilling it, and you start
Yep.
cooking it, and then then that you get a little bit longer, or you throw that food away. And that's
So
what I
yeah,
did.
in my neck of the woods and where I'm from in North Carolina, like hurricanes are our big meteorological menace. And so we would have, every few years we'd have a big hurricane that would knock out the power for up to a week. And where I'm from, it's very common for people to have the big, what do you call them? The big, shoot, the big freezers, like the vault
Oh,
freezers,
oh
or
yeah, yep,
and but so it was always like a big, like as soon as we lost power, like don't open the freezer, like keep it as
oh yeah,
closed for as long as
yep,
possible. And then yeah, like you said, then if the power stays off long enough, then you just got to start tearing into it. But I heard a good
yeah,
trick recently that like, um if you live in a like if you live somewhere and in advance that a hurricane is coming, right? Take
yep,
a coffee mug and fill it with water and put it in the freezer, but before you lose power, and let it freeze, and then put a quarter on top of it. And then once your power goes out, you can use that to gauge um, how fresh or frozen or thawed the food is still in your freezer by that the frozen coffee cup of water with the quarter in it, because the quarter will start to sink down into the ice
Oh,
as it
okay.
starts to thaw out.
Yeah, there you
I
go.
thought that was a neat little trick.
Yeah.
But yeah, so again, like being able to take a game animal and being able to preserve that meat. I mean, that is a very specific skill set that needs to be learned and practiced. Like that's not
Oh,
something
yeah.
you're going to learn out of a survival handbook. Like that's something you
Right.
need to do it to
Yeah.
really learn it. So, like most people, number one, if it's a natural disaster, game animals are going to be gone anyway because they're going to sense whatever coming, and they're gonna be gone anyway.
Right.
Um, and so I think
And
most common
well,
people are going to be left with. Go ahead.
just to also kind of add on to that, like you have to know how to take one of those animals, and you
Yeah.
have to have some kind of tool to do it. So that's the other two pieces of that. Like,
Yeah.
you're not gonna talk a deer down and be like, hey, will you just lay down for me? Like, good luck. You got to get that. So
Just play them this podcast, and maybe they'll just like jump out the window or something. But no, I'm kidding.
wow.
But no, but so like most common people, or most, no offense to anybody that is very adept at dressing and preserving game animals, it's just not common in our society anymore. So people are going to be left with these dehydrated meals, canned food, pickled food, which when I was doing a little bit of reading up, to my surprise, pickling food is actually the I guess the least best way to preserve things, like because like a canned food, like meaning like a can of Green Giant green beans or Del Monte corn or something like that, that can last for up to 5 years. Like whatever the expiration date says, like that was put on there by some lawyer, but the food will actually last and still be good for up to 5 years. Pickling is only good for like a maximum of 18 months, which I did not know.
Right.
But the best is dehydrated stuff. So like
Yeah.
beans, rice, oats, things like that. Basically, if you keep it cool and dry, and so it doesn't mold and rot, it'll basically stay good forever. Is kind of what I read. And growing up, my granddaddy, he used to always say, like, all you need is bullets, band-aids, and beans. And then the Outdoor Boys YouTube that you and I like to watch, like
Yep.
one of the things that I've kind of found interesting, and I kind of felt dumb for not thinking of it before, is like one of his favorite things to do is he just brings those little pouches of boiling bag rice, like the Uncle Ben's boiling bag rice that's like
Yep.
smaller than my hand.
Yep.
And like he makes it in about the same no, I was about to say about the same amount of effort. I don't think that's true. But with about the same amount of stuff in terms of space and weight, he's able to make a way better meal than those Mountain
Yeah.
House meals.
Exactly.
But you know, but he, at the core of it, he always has like he's got a sack of beans, he's got the little bags of the boiling bag rice, and so I mean that's definitely something to take into consideration. And if you're not planning on bugging out, and if you have space at your home, like keeping a stockpile, like those the survival food buckets like you and I were talking about, that's one thing. But I mean, just having rice,
Rice.
beans,
Right.
oats, and some canned food, like that's
So now one of the obviously, that the Outdoor Boys, that Luke they're located in Alaska.
yeah,
So and I don't know which one you've seen, but when he goes out to do some of these type of camps, it's cold out. It's, I mean, sometimes it's
a little bit.
5 below and colder. So you have a lot of options when it comes to meat. Like you can literally just take meat out of your freezer and wrap it in your wool blanket, and
Yep.
it will still be frozen by the time you get to cooking. I've seen some of these guys that do these winter camps, where they'll take a smaller Tupperware full of chicken or whatever that is and throw it in a pan on a fire. Next thing you know, they've got like, chicken teriyaki over rice with,
Yep.
and they're eating it, just a bowl of chicken and rice. So you're right. There are probably a lot better options to those camping meals in that type of situation. But to your point, having a giant bag of rice is easy.
Yeah. and it'll get you by, you know.
Yeah. So back to that, to the pickling portion and just some of the other food prep strategies, if you will. Um, you know, some of those take longer, obviously, than others. Some take days, some take months, some take years.
Yeah.
Um, when we're talking about dehydration, like dehydrating, even making jerky. I mean, you can do it you can go shop on Amazon and you can buy a food dehydrator, but there's other ways to do it without that kind of equipment. Um, but each, like you said, each one will last a certain period of time
Yep.
as well.
Yeah.
So it's
Nothing. I
important
mean,
to.
the only thing I've ever heard is honey. I've always heard that like
Yes,
if you went
dear.
into like some old uh if you went into some like old house like from the 1800s and if you found a jar of honey that it would still be good to eat. I've heard that like jarred like pure honey that
Pure
actually
honey.
came from honey bees in a honeycomb, that it never expires, it never goes bad. But
Must be
and
amazing.
yeah. But yeah, I was surprised that like pickled stuff only lasts for a maximum of 18 months. Once it's opened, it only lasts for they say 3 months maximum once it's open.
Now,
But like
is
I
that
always good.
no? Is that just like buying anything pickled today? Because obviously, you can go to Five Guys and get jalapenos, and it's the fresh jalapenos. I just said Five Guys because it's the only place that I know that has them. But getting fresh jalapenos on a burger is way more intense than buying a jar of jalapenos that are pickled. Yeah, I mean, you can eat those
Yeah.
like, potato chips, where the other ones, they have a little bit of a kick. So is that there is that the pickling that we're referring to, or are you talking about for
The
pickling your
article I
own
read
food?
specifically referred to just pickled vegetables
Just
in
pick.
general.
Got
So
it. Okay. Yeah.
but there was this I found this whole other thing, and like I kind of didn't even want to read about it, but there was an article that I found about you can pickle chicken breasts, and I was like, all right, I don't even
Oh,
want to do
God.
that. But one of the things I like, because yes, I have the survival meals in my storage unit. I do have like a little stockpile of MREs, which even for anybody's information out there, MREs don't really last forever either. I mean, they do have a shelf life. They'll last for a long time, but they do have a shelf life. But some common things that you can just like keep. So little background, like I dated when I was like in my 20s. I dated this Mormon girl. I may have referenced this before, but part of the practice of the Mormon religion, at least her little branch of the tree, they at their like Sunday church services, they talked about prepping, and they talked about how they were supposed to have like a 6 month supply, or no, they were supposed to have a year's supply of like food and water and batteries and all that kind of stuff, and then
Yeah.
they were supposed to have like it was like 6 months worth of like their salary saved up or whatever,
Yeah.
and like they would like call each other out on it, and they all had to like report their status every Sunday, which I thought was really neat. But anyway, the girl I dated, she had like this little storage room, and she had this little stand that it had like it was like 3 or 4 tiers, but it was like wheels, and
Okay.
each wheel was split into quarters, and so each one of those quarters of each tier was 3 months worth of stuff. So the idea was,
Hmm.
you would stock each quarter, and then every 3 months you would eat that one, and then
Okay.
restock it, and then turn it. And
Yeah.
then
Makes
three
sense.
months later, if no emergency had happened, you would eat the next quarter, restock it, and then turn it. And
Right.
hers was just it wasn't stocked with like special emergency food, but just some common foods that will last a lot longer than normal stuff is like peanut butter,
Yeah.
crackers, whole wheat crackers, any kind of nuts or trail mix, like those things will just on their own will last for a long time. Like
Yeah.
cereal, like dried breakfast cereal, like Cheerios, like that
Yep.
kind of stuff. Granola bars, and I know like at least for me, because I try to make good nutritional decisions. So you kind of have to separate that from when we're talking about survival and an emergency, because
Right.
some highly processed foods they're not going to be good for you on a long-term dietary dietary like outcome, but in short term, just for survival, you
Right.
know. And an
Yeah.
example of that is like power bars. Like I don't
Yeah.
know what power bars are made out of, but they taste all right and they'll never go bad and they'll
Right.
you know they'll last. But
If you
anything
look at
that's
them,
like yeah,
they're
I know
not, they are not, they just don't look good. But
they look the same coming out as going in, but
it, well, but hold on. Let me just kind of unwrap that for a second, because I think that goes back to what you said about the MRE. Those MREs are not designed, and this is going to sound weird because it's within the military. They're not designed to be long-term options.
correct.
They're designed for that quick, that to keep you energized, but they're probably not good. And it's funny because we're gonna actually do an episode where the guys from We Like Shooting, they lived on those for 30 days.
Oh my god. So for the but like I'll finish what I was saying and I'll come back to that.
Yeah,
So
please.
but like just common foods that you can keep, peanut butter, whole wheat
Yep.
crackers, nuts, trail mix kind of stuff, like breakfast cereal, granola bars, power bars, dried fruits like the dried little apricots and dried bananas
Oh
and
yeah.
raisins,
Yep.
things like that.
Yep.
And then all your, you know, when people talk about canned foods, at least for me, my mind automatically goes to like canned green beans and canned corn and
Right.
stuff like that. But you know, tuna fish, salmon, they even make it looks like a can of tuna, but it's turkey or chicken they have now.
Yep.
And then all your canned vegetables and stuff like that. But living off MREs for 30 days, like if
Oh.
anybody doesn't know, if you've not eaten MREs for very long consecutively, you'll typically get pretty extreme and painful constipation, because also and they do it on purpose. It's not by accident. Like the MREs
Right.
are really high in sodium, so that when you hydrate, that it retains the hydration. So
Right.
you'll get like really bloated and like a little bit like your joints will swell up a little bit from all the salt and yeah, like I said, you're really only supposed to eat one a day, and like you said, it's really only meant to like be a stopgap to keep you going. I would definitely I and transparency, I've never eaten MREs for 30 days, and I would not volunteer to do so. When I was in
Yeah.
buds training, I went through SEAL training. I'm not a Navy SEAL. I didn't make it. Don't get on the internet and say I said I was a Navy SEAL, but I was in buds training, and there was 1 week during training that the our schedule is so jam packed that the galley's 2 miles away. So to run to the galley to eat and then run back, it's, you know, however long it takes you to eat, 30-40 minutes to eat, plus a 2 mile run there, plus a 2 mile run back. And our schedule was during this 1 week of training is too much. So I did like it was a Monday through Friday, and all literally like pretty much all I ate was MREs for an entire Monday through Friday. But
Wow.
I
Yeah.
would not volunteer to eat MREs for 30 days. That
Yeah.
sounds painful and not enjoyable and possibly hazardous to your overall
Oh
health.
yeah.
But
Yeah. I'm curious to see
oh
what he
my
has to
God.
say after that. But one of the other things when we're talking about canned food is soups.
Yeah.
That's another one. Again, you can pop those, eat them directly from the can.
Yep.
You do not need to heat them up. I mean, in this situation, again, it really, like you said, the MREs, they come with a heating element, and how many people use them, or how many people just start eating that stuff right out of the bag. Same thing with these soup, and a Dinty Moore beef stew is probably a little bit better tasting than the MRE. May
Well,
not
because of the
be
way the
much
MREs are,
better.
sorry,
No, go ahead.
because of the way the MREs are packaged, I've actually myself, I've never used the MRE heater to heat the MRE. The times that I have wanted to heat the MRE and had the time to do it, um, I would just throw it up on top of the truck and let it sit in the sun for a little bit, and like that heated
Yeah,
it up adequately. But yeah, like you don't need to cook it. And same thing with like canned vegetables and stuff. You don't, they're
yeah,
fine to eat right out of the can. You might would prefer them to be heated up, but yeah, it's
sure.
not necessary at all. Yeah.
Yeah. So, looking at some of those food prep options, is there one that you think you would gravitate to if you started to get into the preparing food for an extended period of time? And I guess the follow-up question to that is, how long do you decide to prepare food for? Is it 30 days? I mean, do you do you think people prepare for 6 months worth? And again, that could be stockpiling the buckets that you're talking about,
Yeah.
but you know, how long do you put this on the schedule for, so to speak?
So I mean, you and I have talked in other podcasts before about how like all the, what we now refer to as like as prepping or some, it's kind of like some quasi extreme like fringe thing at one point in this country was just daily life.
Right. Right.
And so like when I grew up on a farm in North Carolina, and we like for our main like crop for that we sold for money was tobacco. But my grandfather, he also had like a little section of the farm where we grew corn, tomatoes, cucumbers. We also had peach trees, apple trees, plum trees, grapevines, strawberries. I'm trying to think. I feel like I'm forgetting. So, green beans, or they call, my grandma called them snap beans or
Yep.
snap peas.
That pays, yep.
And so we would grow that stuff, you plant it in the spring through the summer, you harvest it in the fall, and then all the old ladies like in the fall, we about this time of the year, we would do like all the old ladies from the community would come to my grandma's house, and they would do like a whole big like day of canning. And there'd be like one
Okay.
person would be like boiling the jars, and then they'd take the jar out, and it was, all these old ladies would make this assembly line and canning, basically using like the mason jars, all the vegetables. But that was done basically with the idea that still the mentality that we're harvesting all this stuff now, we need to have enough food to last through the winter. So to your
Yeah.
question about how long do you prep for, I mean, like, just when this kind of thing was just daily life in America, the kind of the mindset was just 3 to 4 months, just enough to get us through the winter. And then, like
Yeah.
I said, when I was dating that Mormon girl, like, the little system that they had in place that worked really well, they had a year's worth of stuff, but
Yeah.
most of that was not. She wasn't actually like canning and prepping that food. It was all store bought stuff, but she
Yeah.
she had it organized in a way that it was a year's worth of stuff. And like I
Yeah.
said, every 3 months she would eat a quarter of it, restock it, and then rotate
Yeah.
the little wheel.
Yeah.
So I guess that would be my answer. Would
Yeah.
be like, if I would say if you've got 6 months of stuff, whichever method you're going to use, if you're going to buy store bought stuff or prep food yourself, if you're really having an eye towards disaster preparedness, I would say 6 months would
Right.
be a good number. A year if you can.
Sure. And there's some of that, like boxed pasta
Yeah.
that lasts for extended period of time. And that's, if you need to have some food ready to cook in a situation where you just need to boil water, well, there you go. I
Yeah.
mean, you don't need a lot to prepare. um it, it- that being, like that side of it, when you start looking at what you can just buy from the store and just have on your shelf downstairs, wherever you have your food pantry. But one of the things that you just mentioned, which I think is really important to this food prepping, is, do you have the ability to grow some of your own food? I think that is really huge. Those guys out there, the folks out there that are really making sure that they're a part of this survivalism movement, and they want to be more self-sustained. And it really doesn't have to do with prepping or being a survivalist. It's, they just want to be more self-sustained. They
Yep.
want to grow their own food, their own vegetables that may not have pesticides and everything else on there. I mean, that's a huge thing, when some of the stuff that you buy from the store. Just having a farm, raising chickens, raising goats, I mean, that's food.
Yep.
Whether you want to, have a pig on there and name him something like Bacon, or Wilbur. Again, when it comes down to it, he may be a pet, but he's also a source of food. So there's people out there that raise chickens. They get their eggs there, and that's what they do. So I think it's how you want to go about it. If you want to be prepared with a stockpile of food, you can do that by going to the grocery store, or, getting canned goods, getting box pasta, getting some of these meals. You have to think of what you're going to eventually, I guess, use it for.
Yeah, and the self-sufficiency piece is a really important thing. It's an important point to make, and an important thing to think about. I've referenced this before too. I should find it so I can be more specific. I read it about, I don't know when it was written, but I read it about 15 years ago. It's this article called Nine Meals from Anarchy. And it was like this long, like basically like thesis paper that was written that's like the way our society has become. Our society in America at large is only 9 meals away from anarchy. Like
Yeah.
when people don't eat for one day and they miss 3 meals, they're going to be okay. When they don't eat for 2 days and they've missed 6 meals, they're going to start getting antsy. But most people, once they have missed 9 consecutive meals, like the point of this paper was, at that point, that's when society is going to completely break down. And the
It's insane.
for people that are relying on store-bought stuff, and I'm in the military, I live in San Diego, I'm a single dad, like that has kind of, I don't have room to grow a garden, and I don't have
Right.
all the old ladies that can come over and do my canning for me. So I'm one of those. I'm in a position where I'm kind of relying on store-bought stuff. But the importance to stockpile is because
Right.
in some sort of emergency, once supply lines and stuff break down, like regular grocery stores in, on Main Street, USA, are going to be empty maximum in 72 hours.
Right.
Like
And
that's
we saw it.
after
I mean,
72 hours, stores are going to be completely empty. So
yeah. And so, we saw it. I mean, remember back in 2000 or 2020, 2021, or more 2020, when the whole, whatever you want to call it, happened. Remember what it was like at the grocery store. Again, maybe hand sanitizer, toilet paper, but there was a shortage of things. I mean, you couldn't get
right,
certain stuff.
and so with people panic buying, it's probably not even going to last 72 hours. But
Right.
if you search it, just when everything is normal and everything is good and everybody's buying habits are normal and average, the entire inventory of your neighborhood grocery store does a complete turnover every 3 to 4 days. So
Right.
that's why, like, once that supply line stops, the maximum amount of time that the stuff in your neighborhood grocery store is going to last is 72 hours. When people start panic buying, then it's going to decrease it even from there.
Right. So if there are some takeaways that I'd like listeners, viewers to absorb from today's episode, is some of these things, like we just talked about. Understanding what it takes to become self-sustained, and understand your situation. And it may not be where you or I can go garden, because we don't have that opportunity, but
Yeah.
which makes me want to level up my game of providing meat without having to use a grocery store, meaning hunting and processing
Yep.
animals. A good friend of mine, he gets deer every year, and I was telling him about, that I just made some ground turkey for the week, and he was like, next time you come over, he was like, let me give you some venison. It's like, make some ground venison. And it's like, I have, I want to cycle that stuff out because I want to fill the freezer again this winter. So, understand what's missing in your survivalist book of skills, I guess, and basically look at what you're preparing these meals for. Is it just to have a stockpile of food should the grocery stores run out? Okay, understand what that looks like, and give yourself a kind of a calendar of, okay, I need to have 6 months worth of canned goods, boxed food downstairs that I can prepare, and just kind of understand what you're doing. Going camping for the weekend, try some ReadyWise meals, try some MREs, try some, what is the company that you were talking about?
The stuff that I have, the My Patriot Supply stuff.
Yeah, check out My Patriot Supply and go that route. But there's a lot of different ways that you can go here, and we just wanted to start this conversation. This this is probably one of those podcasts that will become a part 2 or a further exploring the food prepping down the road. But that's the
Well,
best
I
part
got to
about
know
it is,
how those the 30-day MRE
oh yeah,
guys
yeah.
survived, but
Yeah, I will. In fact, I think what we'll do is when they
they're going
get
to be
back to
hoping
me,
for number 2 also.
yeah, they are hoping for no. They already did this.
Oh, they
So,
already did it. Oh, okay.
oh yeah, they already did it. So when he came on the show the first time, which was I think the first video show that we did. He said, "Remind me to tell you about that time that we lived on MREs for 30 days." So when he gives me the date, we'll make sure that we schedule that, and we'll have him on and go through all of it and have a fun day.
Yeah, I mean, I guess the last point that I'll just make again, I've referenced it kind of all the way through the episode here today. This is not one of those things that is just like a one and done. Like
Right.
all these options that we've talked about, literally every single one of them has a shelf life. So this is not one of those things where you can buy this one thing one time, put it in the basement, and forget about it. And 10 years from now, when you need it, it's going to be there. I mean, everything has a shelf life.
Yeah.
So keep that in mind. Whichever out of everything we've talked about today, whichever one of these routes you decide you want to go to have prepared food for an emergency, like everything has a shelf life. So
Yeah. And yet, and that goes for a couple other things as well. I mean, medical supplies,
batteries.
Those are all things. If you have a area in your house where you have all of this prep stuff and you have medical med kits there and whatnot, you need, and we brought this up on a podcast a while back, you need to look at the meds on there and make sure that they have not expired. Some of them, as they do expire, they become very hazardous. So food is going to be the same thing.
Yeah. And
Don't
I'm
start
telling you,
eating expired food.
it's a bummer when you buy a $100 med kit and you never use it. And then a few years later, like, sorry, man, you got to spend $100 again to restock that med kit because everything in it has gone bad. Like, or you can find out the hard way, but
yeah. And we don't recommend that.
no.
But another great episode. I hope you all have enjoyed what we put out there today. I would love to hear some feedback as far as what your food preparation looks like, your food prepping, not so much meal prep for the week, but food preparation, and how you're doing it, what you're doing, and what your end goal is for that. So until next time, I'm out of here. Jamie?
Yeah, it's easy to be hard. It's hard to be smart. We'll see you next time.
Awesome, guys. Stay safe out there. We'll talk to you next time.